Yep.
Pablo, real quick before you jump in.
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously, being brand new, it might be a dumb question, but I'll ask it anyways. It's safe for me to assume that these are regional teams coming in that have been selected from the regional select coaches, correct?
Correct.
So
basically, the select program runs in ID centers.
Yeah.
Regional level, national level.
Clear. And so is the tactics and the strategies for each coach with their region, are they going to be training and coaching the same things through the Rush way, or are they going to obviously be in different places based on skill level of players and who they've got and how they're going to run it, or is everyone kind of coming in for each region?
More or less, to be honest, because and this is just by experience, right? Like I've coached select too, and the coach has partial knowledge of the players. Right. He has references. Some of them, which I mean, we clap on that. It's like some of them are dedicated enough to actually call every coach of that player and try to get some insights. But when it comes to trying to organize the training session that they're going to run, it's complicated. They don't really know what the players are capable of. So you'll see that even if it's a good learning opportunity and it's a nice experience for the player, there's a big component too that it's about, and we talk about this a lot, it's like as a coach in an event of this type, it is very, very important to try to ease the player, to try to make him feel comfortable quick, because, you know, it's a stressful situation. First of all, they don't know anybody. It's all new players. You know, it's a different level, so they feel like they got to perform. And, you know, in the back of their mind, it's also like, well, we came all the way here, maybe from Virginia, from like for this event. So a lot of the role of the coach in this event in particular is to try to help the psychological side of the player, so they relax and they do their thing. You know, they show what they can do. And if you want to add a little bit more, and maybe this is my opinion, I think that at the hub in particular, it's always a competition. But how can I put it? Let me put it like this: winning is a little bit less relevant at the hub. Why? Because we're all rushed. So it's for me, it's a lot more important to provide the right context for scouting at the event than actually making a big focus on like, okay, what's the region that won. I do get it, like you're U17 and you went to PDT to nationals after, and like, yeah, obviously we're gonna compete against other clubs. In the performance component, it's still youth. We're still trying to teach. We're still trying to have players learn. But yeah, I get it. The competition is going to be a little bit more present, definitely. But at the hub, that it's an internal event. I think the most important thing is to provide the conditions for scouting. You know, to be able to identify top talent. And of course, stating the obvious of providing a great experience for those players, right? Like for some of them, it's an incredible experience that they don't have back home. So that's the obvious part. Did I respond to your question, Marlon? Yeah. Cool. So did anybody have the opportunity to check? And I'm sorry, I mean, actually, did anybody have the opportunity to kind of like scan through the documents that we sent as learning material prior to this meeting? If you couldn't, no worries, and I get it. Is there anything from this document? You know, I love this document. I talk about this document a lot because this is a cornerstone of everything, in my opinion. It sounds very philosophical, very abstract at some points, but there are some pillars, some fundamentals that are stated in this document that were the base of everything. Everything else that we built after was based on, we got to ensure compliance to this. Is there anything that you guys found important or that resonated with you before I go into anything specific? No? Okay. I'm sure I'm going to get more comments as I go into this. So there are two sections in particular that are going to be really relevant for us in this workshop. And it's the section that says what we believe in, and then the section that says how we coach. All of the other sections are crucial too, but in this workshop in particular, we're going to focus on those two. And this is the reason. As I was saying, one of the main topics that we want to cover is how to create training sessions the Rush way, like how to provide an environment in those sessions that we consider the Rush way. And this is very important, because we get from coaches all the time, like, hey, you know what, I would like to get more sessions, I would like to see this, I would like to see that. Or a lot of coaches say, like, hey, look at this activity. And all of that is great, but I would say, like, finding activities is the easiest thing in the market. Like, you can go on Instagram, literally on Instagram at this point, if you want to find a session, if you want to find an activity. The big question is, how is it that that activity, that session reflects your club? Like, how is that representing the core values of your club, the player development approach, and why are you placing it? Because I don't want to say, why are you doing it at a certain stage? Why are you doing it at U9, U10? Because chronological ages can be very relative. But what it is really important is to try to say, where do you place it in the process? Right. So those two things are very important. Where do you place it on the process, and how is that representing your club? That's the key. And to understand that, you got to start by this. You got to understand. You got to start by saying, hey, what is it that you believe in at the end? So we started by that, and we said, hey, at Rush Soccer, we believe that the game is a teacher, and that's our first sentence, right? I would say the game is a teacher, and it sounds like a cliche, but then as you start thinking about it, the role that you have as a coach, this phrase is important. If you say that the game is a teacher, what are you? You're not the teacher? Okay, so what are you? So as the coach, you're the facilitator. You're a facilitator of learning environments, right? It's like Einstein said, I never attempt to teach anything to my students. I attempt to provide the conditions for them to learn. It's a different thing. It's a lot about this thing that is very fashionable now, that is saying it's a player-centered approach. It's a participant-centered approach. We facilitate an environment for them to learn. We don't dictate. We don't really believe that people are like it used to be before in education, like an empty vessel. You're just filling it with information. It's not really like that. It's not really like that. So it's just by starting by saying, hey, we believe that the game is a teacher, you're actually making a step in that direction. The second one is something that I'm a big fan of. That is, we say, it is in the complexity of the games where skills and creativity arise, and not in isolated, mechanized situations. And the follow-up says, this last can introduce a concept or a technique, but can never be the core or the proposed channel for learning. That's key, because that's going to condition the entire curriculum. That's going to condition the way that you run sessions. Why? Because you're saying, don't break the complexity of the game. Sometimes we have this tendency of trying to make everything in little fragments. And what happens is, like, there's a very famous, let me give you an example. There's a very famous piano player. He's actually a director for an orchestra now. Very famous person. His name is Daniel Barenboim. And he said once, when you're trying to play a masterpiece, you can't break it down in too many pieces, because it's not easy to stick it back together after. That's sometimes what happens with soccer. We try to break everything down so much that we end up going against the complexity of the game itself. You learn, in our opinion, we believe that you actually learn within the complexity itself of the game. How is that affecting your sessions? Well, it affects everything. It even affects the definitions that you have about playing soccer and soccer skills. And I gave this example at the last Rush Summit that we had with all of the clubs. I asked everybody, and I said, how would you define a good pass? Who can give me one? Who wants to bet on that one? How would you define a good pass? And again, you can disagree with me, because I'm not any sort of guru or anything like it. So you can actually believe in something completely different, but this is what we believe in. So who wants to give it a shot? How would you define a good pass? Peter, I have you on my screen. And
I'll take a chance at it.
go for it.
One that you would choose not to do again or redo.
Ones that you would choose
Not to redo. It was a
not
good
to
pass if you
Mhm.
wouldn't choose to try it again.
That's a good logic. I like the logic behind that one. Yeah, that's not a bad one. Who else has one?
I would say proper pace and weight, played it to the right place at the right time.
There's a part about that one that I really like, and there's a part that I don't like. Actually. but that's me. Who has another one?
I would say something to the effect of, you know, in terms of the decision making. So the ball gets from like a play with purpose, right? You know, moving up the field, A to B, and it really doesn't matter how it gets there. It just is it the right decision at the right time, and is it done correctly, and does it get from A to B, you know, with purpose? But other than that, it doesn't really matter.
I should meet you, Kyle, because I know you. You know me. It's just been in a seminar workshop. She's cheating a little bit. She's cheating a little. Yeah, but no, yes, I agree with Kyle actually. And I agree with something that Peter said as well. And so that's what we believe in. We believe it's about effectiveness. So a lot of times you ask that question and people say that, well, you know, it's the weight, it's the pace, it's I had one person once tell me, well, it's about the biomechanics of how you pass it. And I'm like, who cares about that? I'm like, who cares about that? Like, the question is, to me, the definition of a good pass is a ball that gets to your teammate at the right space at the right time, period. How it got there, how you kicked it, or if your knee was bent or not, who cares? Is that the ball? Sometimes I like saying that passing is an act of empathy, because you got to think about the ball that your teammate needs. So it's like, where does he need it? Where does she need it? When? How fast? Does she need it into space? Does she need it? Sometimes you kick it. Yeah, look at all the things that you do when you're a player, right? Like sometimes we were talking about this one. Like if I want to pass it to Peter because I see it on the screen, and the bookshelf behind them is marking him, there's even a chance that I'm gonna pass the ball purposely slow because I'm trying to drag him towards me so he can control and move out of pressure. Now, how I did that, sometimes you just touch it with your toe. Who cares? Is that the ball that you need? Is the only question. Now, why is that important to me? Because we go back to the previous one. We say, if I say that a good pass has a time and a space, right? Like, it only exists within a context. It only exists within a game situation to define what was a good pass and a bad pass. So if you don't present a game situation in your training session, how's the player possibly going to learn it? How is Peter going to learn that I need the ball into space over there if there's not an opponent, if there's not a game situation that marks a time and a space? So that's why we say, hey, it is in the complexity of the game that skills and creativity arise and develop, not in an isolated, mechanized situation. I can't ask Peter to imagine, hey, imagine that there's a player right now. Why not just put the player there? We need a situation in which the player is there. That's what we say. Now, we're not being, how do you say, overly strict in that sense. It's not that we're saying like, hey, you should never, you know, step 10 yards from each other and pass the ball. No, you can definitely do it. Obviously that you can do it. The problem is, for us, the problem is when that's your proposed channel for learning. When you think that that's the way that people are going to learn. Now, can you do it? Because maybe there's a very marked technical flaw. imagine that somebody can stop the ball with the chest, right? Like if you put him in a game situation with two guys trying to anticipate, two center backs that are 6'4", trying to anticipate him, and well, it's gonna be complicated for the guy that's hardly like mastering how to stop the ball with the chest. So maybe you break it down and you say like, hey, let's try this a little bit, like until you get the motion. But if we're talking about skills, that is not the same as technique, because skill, that is what we look for, implies that you're effective doing it in a game situation. So how are you going to learn a skill if there's not a game situation? That's the base reasoning that we have. And I think you can translate that reasoning into pretty much every skill that you do in soccer. One of my favorite ones is actually, I had a teacher, one of my mentors. He's from Argentina, and he was in River Plate, in Boca, in Quilmes, in a lot of players, in Independiente. And now he's an educator, and he told me, I don't understand when people, make a line of cones and they're just doing slalom, and you ask the coach, and you tell them, like, hey, what are you practicing? And they say like, no, we're practicing dribbling. And he said, what? And he's like, what are the fundamentals of dribbling? And this is like the good pass, right? And you have people that start saying like, well, you drop a shoulder, you change paces, you do this, you do that. He's like, what? The only fundamental of dribbling is deception. And it's true. It doesn't matter how you do it. The only thing that matters is like, if I pretend to go to the left, you're the defender, you went to the left and I went to the right, worked. Sometimes the best dribble is to actually not do anything. And I've seen players do that, they pretend that they go and they step. And you got confused, you got deceived. Now again, the only way that you can do that is within a game situation. It's impossible to put two cones and say like, hey, you know what, there goes the ball. Pretend that the guy is gonna do this. Nah, that's not realistic. So in fact, look at this. It was just a couple weeks ago, we posted this article that is actually for parents, and because the parents get confused too, like the parents, they see this, and well, I mean, the video is pretty already, and there are cones everywhere. You're not exactly sure if the guy is going to train soccer, is going to land the plane here, but you see it and it looks great. And they do these things. Look, there's a red cone and a yellow cone. So he's going to pass and then say like yellow, and the guy goes and touches it. Like, well, maybe if you're trying to develop some sort of physical skill, like I'll get it. But when you say, oh no, this is how we're going to learn to pass, well, that gets weird already for me. Because I would say like, well, let's start by the beginning. Do they have any sort of mechanical, technical flaw passing? And the two kids there I'm seeing, like, I mean, they didn't look like the future Messi, but the technique is decent in that sense. So what's the goal of the exercise? It just looks pretty. Now, if I had to choose between that or this, that doesn't look that pretty. Definitely the video is a lot older, but they're simply doing one. They're playing 3v3. Keep away. Now, does it look pretty? No. It looks chaotic. The ball's going to go out of bounds a lot. Soccer at these stages actually looks like, it's like everybody running after the ball. It's like a big mass of people like running after the ball. But which activity or exercise would I pick? I definitely go with the second one. Why? Because it respects the complexity of the game. The only thing that he did is he took the goals away. Why? Because he wants them to pass it instead of shooting. That's it. The game was not brutally altered. Right?
Pablo?
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have a question. I understand what you're saying theoretically. However, there's a difference between technique and skill.
Exactly.
And if a kid has poor technique, your second section here where you're doing it into live play doesn't pan out in the long term for a player. So the question would be, skill to me is technique done under pressure. And the other element of skill is being able to select the right technique to use given that pressure. So the 3v3 live is working on skills, whereas the first one was maybe working on technique,
Totally.
as well as in the first
Really?
one, cognitive development is a big part of it. Using the different colors and stuff like that is getting them to think faster, process information faster while executing a skill or a technique, because if you can't perform a technique while distracted, while imploring mental capacity, then you are not going to actually perfect it into a skill. So there is room for
Exactly.
both.
No, so exactly. So I agree with you. It's not like we're saying like, oh no, you should discard the first one. The question is like, sometimes what I think is like, do they need it? Like that's what I mean, because you're saying like, what are you going to work on the first one? You're going to work on a technique, but do they need the technique, or is the technique good already, and the improvement that they need is actually skills related? Because I see the two kids, for example, and it's a demonstration. Of course, it's a video for a demonstration, but in the passing part, at least, it doesn't really look like the technique is full of flaws. Doesn't seem to be a mechanical issue. Now the question is, if you take a mini game, do they pass it to the right place in the right moment, or are they constantly making a problem that relates a lot more to the decision making? Because that's the greater question. And yes, I mean, if you had two players and you don't have anything else, I agree with the cons. Like if you had two players, you can create a more game realistic situation, and you want to add that cognitive development. Yeah, I don't have anything against it, but if you ask me, like in comparison to the quality of actually turning around and having an opponent, I would pick the opponent all the way, because it's the same as, like now you have these machines, for example, that you pass it back, you turn around and there's a light, and they say like, oh, but this is incredible for cognitive development, like, yeah, but you know what's even more interesting than that? If you turn around and you have an opponent, if you turn around and there's another player, because in the game we play against players, not cons. So again, that's why we were saying before, we live in a world of grays. It's not black and white. We don't think that there's anything wrong with this, but for us as a proposed channel for learning, if this is the main channel of learning of your training, we would say no, we don't like it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. But it can be useful in a lot of senses. Completely. That's what I was telling you before, because that's actually a real story that happened to me. The one about controlling the ball with the chest. I wanted them to learn to control long passes. In reality, it was not necessarily with the chest, but and what I realized is like the game itself for a couple of players, actually, it was too challenging. It was like they just didn't have the technique, and all of the rest was like extra noise, extra complexity. So they were not getting it. So I said like, well, this is the moment that I got to break it down and work on something like what we see on the screen. Okay, get the motion first, and then when you feel comfortable with that, let's move back to the realistic situation, to the game situation. But again, in my opinion, sometimes we run things like this when we didn't need them. Sometimes we say like, oh, we're gonna do technical work, but the technique was there already. It was not there, was the skill. So yeah, it's the fine line, right, between the two sometimes. But that was a good one. So exactly. So based on all that, we have this cool rule. It's not a rule, it's a philosophy that we have that is called 70 games. And because for us, the exposure to game realistic situations, and there's nothing more specific and game realistic than the game itself, is we try to play 70 games a year. And it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy. A lot of people call me, they're like, you're mental. It's impossible to play 70 full games a year. And we're like, no, hold on. We're talking about 70 learning instances a year. So, and this applies especially for U13 plus, right? So we say we want them to have 70 11v11 learning instances. That means, maybe you play what, 35 to 32 to 30 to 40 maybe full games a year. So something that you can do, we support that, we encourage that idea. Is like, hey, if you're training 3 times a week, why don't you do a quick 30, 35 minutes, 40 minutes scrimmage as part of one of your training sessions? Because that way you're adding one more learning instance in the real numbers. And from U12 and under, this is something that I'm very, very big on, is for us, the spirit of the 70 games is based on maximizing the hours of opposed playing time. And when we say that, we don't really talk about training more, because I've had this conversation more than once. And sometimes I'm like, whoa, like you have a parent, and maybe the kid player is 10 years old, and they say like, oh, my son is really into soccer. How many times a week do you think that he should be training? And I'm like, well, training twice is good, but playing every single day, yeah? Playing as much as you want, but training, he doesn't necessarily need more training. It's not always about training. Give spaces for free play, to fall in love with the game, to explore things. And what we deeply believe in is, have you ever, like, do you know any professional players? Or like, if you ask any professional or former professional players how they learn to play the game, you might get different responses, but there's always a common denominator. And they always tell you, when I was a kid, I used to play all day. I used to play all day. Now, a lot of people in my opinion, they misunderstand that statement, and they think, oh, okay, so all we got to do is we bring them to practice, we split them in 2, play all day, right? Fine, it's not like that. The role of the club is to accelerate the learning process. But what I've never seen, so I've seen a lot of professional players, including the ones that are colleagues of ours, including the president of the club, they used to play at least 10 hours a week, opposed playing time, not against the wall. If you do it against the wall, that's all that, again, world of grace. There's nothing wrong about it, but opposed playing time, playing 2v2, 3v3, 4v3, 4v3 plus your grandmother in a chair, whatever, but a lot of hours in direct confrontation. So that for us is key, because I've met a lot of professional players. They all done it when they were kids, but doing it, and this is where we say this is the big misunderstanding. A lot of people think like, okay, if they do that, they're gonna be professionals. And I'm like, no, definitely not. It's a necessary condition, not a sufficient one. So what we've never met, this is what I say, I've met a lot of professional players that they didn't have great coaches when they were kids, but they used to play all day and they ended up making it. Like, what I've never met is a player that had great coaches and he comes to me and answers, oh no, you know what? I used to play 4 or 5 hours, like 3 times a week at the club. That was pretty much it. Then I like video games, but I had great coaches. I've never met a professional player like that. You know what I mean? Like, so again, so spending a lot of hours on the wall in an opposed environment for us is crucial. That doesn't mean that your player is going to make it to pro, but for us it's crucial. So we encourage that. We encourage the clubs, and we're actually starting to measure, like, how many hours a week are your players playing in opposed environments? And why in opposed environments? You can relate it to what we said at the beginning, because we think that the game is a teacher, and we think that if you want to develop skills, you need a game situation. How many hours? And even more, I invite everybody to say, to think about this. It's like, how many of the things that we learn in coaching courses are directed to increasing the repetition, right? Don't make lines. There are many reasons for this, and don't take it as black and white. Don't make lines. 1 ball per player. The play, practice, play model, the idea has many reasons. Again, don't take it as black and white. Is you come, you start playing right away, and you don't waste time. There are a lot of things like this. Hey, relax. There are a lot of things like that they aim to increase in repetition, right? From repetition comes mastery. So I always say all of that is really pretty, but I can tell you for granted that when Maradona was a kid and he went to training, there was 1 ball, right? And yeah, he was not getting as many repetitions within the training session. But you know what happens? He was going to play 9 more hours that day. So how many times? What was the repetition in the total? What was the total repetition in the day, basically? Like, I wouldn't be so concerned, even if I will still do it in my session, but I wouldn't be so concerned about increasing the number of repetitions within my training session if I knew that my players are also playing 4 more hours after that. They're going to get a lot of touches in the ball, that's for sure. So for us, that's very, very important. It's very, very important. We haven't found, unfortunately, the studies that we see from research is that top players in top developing countries like Brazil, Argentina, the players play around 11 to 13 hours of a week in opposed environments. Playing, not necessarily training. That's what we say. And we haven't found, unfortunately, 1 club within the Rush network in which U12 and unders are playing more than 7. Obviously, there's a big part that it's about the pickup play, the street soccer, the spontaneous thing that happens in those countries. But what we insist is, like, you're telling me the problem, but you're not giving me the solution. So if it's not happening spontaneously, then let's make it happen artificially, right? Add an hour before training in which they can come and just play freely. Add a futsal program to your programming. There are many things that you can do. Sorry, I got a question from Katie. Well, she runs a class for geometry, maybe. What are your suggestions to the free play outside of the 2 training sessions each week without the external influences like this that we play only outside? So yeah, no, completely. That's the big one, right? Is what can we do as a club to try to increase the playing time in opposed environments if it's not happening naturally? And it's what I was saying before. I know clubs that do, for example, they add futsal as part of their programming. It's so basically they train 2 times a week and then they have 1 futsal or 2 futsal days. And what we recommend is, like, those 2 futsal days, they don't necessarily need to be coached, because you don't want to have coach all the time. Like, you got to give them space to play, right? To play. Then we ask, we ask ourselves, it's like, hey, how is it that my players are not good at drills? Well, if there was, every time they play, there's a coach that's telling them, like, hey, you're 1v3, you shouldn't be dribbling. And how do you want them to learn that? Just let them drill. Nobody said that to Neymar, I'm sure, on the street, and that's why he's so good at it, or one of the reasons why he's so good at it. So yeah, so that's one. At futsal, at 1 hour before or after the session in which they can play freely, to split them up, and let them play. I know clubs that they do like 4v4s in the parking lot. This is serious. This is real. They set up like little 4v4 courts with small goals, 4v4, and they play. So yeah, it's a little bit about getting creative in that sense, but there are simple options for it. Well, when this is not happening, I'm signing off. I'm doing an expert. Looking forward to the session. Where are they gonna happen? I get it. Organized pickup for sure when this is not happening. To be honest, Katie, I know I know it happens in real life. There are more complicated scenarios. Sometimes you don't have the space, sometimes you don't have the fields, but I struggle to think that we can do anything, to be honest. I've had a team that, for example, what we did was we didn't have field space. So what we did was I asked the parents. We were renting an extra, we were renting a small-sided field once a week. And for what? Just to go play. And even the days that I couldn't go, they would still take the kids to play. They were going to stay 1 hour, 2 hours, just playing freely. I think there's always something that you can do. Anyway, very good. So why is it that all of this is important? You're probably thinking, how am I going to relate all of this with the way that we want to train sessions? So all of this part that we've been talking about is important because it's the framework. It's the framework. It draws the line of the field, I say, right? Like there are obviously things that we're looking for and things that we're not looking for. And so we said from there, and this was the most complicated part, honestly, when we were designing the methodological approach for our club, for the club, like worldwide, was how can we? I don't believe in prescriptions. I don't believe in people that, for instance, I never like the question when people tell me like, hey, they tell me like, Rush, do you guys use a 4 activity structure for your sessions? And I'm like, no, like it depends, depending on the session, depending on the age, depending on the 5 minutes. I mean, depending on how questions like what are you going to teach him? How are you going to teach it? Period. That's what we think. We're not prescriptive. That's what I'm trying to say. And I always refuse to say, hey, this is your 52 weeks plan for U8. Follow it, no matter what, because that's also unrealistic. To start with, relating concepts to chronological ages is very hard and very relative, right? First of all, we know that biologically, kids grow at very different paces. And second one, there's a level component too. So if I say like, oh, you're U15, no, you get a first week of the year, you got to be working on building out of the back. You know, like, how do you know that session fits the needs of those players? So it's very complicated to be prescriptive. And at the end, I don't believe in that, because the one thing that I can't do, and I've been saying this for like 2 years now, is the one thing that I can do is I can give all of the tools, I can create all of the resources for all of our clubs and coaches and players. But what I can't do is I can't observe for them. And the observation, the technical eye, Tim calls them the technical eye. The observation of the coach is everything. You got to know who you have in front. And from there, you'll adapt the session, you'll adapt the concepts. Now, by saying that, I'm not trying to say, okay, now everything's relative. No, not like that. Let's start from a structure. Let's start from somewhere. So instead of trying to create like a prescription and say like, oh, every U8 should be doing this, that we know that it's unrealistic, we said, and I'll tell you one more reason why it's unrealistic, because I don't know you as a coach. And maybe Trey and myself, we coach in very different ways. But maybe we're both effective at it, or maybe we're both ineffective at it. But hopefully we're effective at it. But yes, there's not a one way. And coaching is it's a lot about human relationships. So you can't really give a prescription for it. So what we started thinking is like, how can we create a model or a framework that is flexible enough for the coach to say, hey, these are the players that I have in front of me, and I need to adapt things to them, and this is the way that I am, so I need to you want to be authentic, but at the same time, we're sustaining a line, we're sustaining a set of non-negotiables that unite us all as Rush clubs and as Rush coaches all over the world. So even if we have a curriculum, and we'll see it, and you'll see it, it's not like one thing goes against the other anyway. But what we said is like, we're going to look for principles. So we define a set of 8 principles that we want to see in every coaching session, exceptions aside, because there's always an exception. But we said, we're not going to tell you, hey, at your U9, the second week, you had to coach this session. We're going to tell you the 8 principles that we want to see reflected in that session. And then we're going to give you a session that you can use as an example. But if you come up with another one, and maybe it's better than the one that I'm giving you, that's great. And actually send it to me, because I would like to see it. So those 8 principles is what we call the Rush Blue Thread. And these 8 principles is what we're going to see, Kyle knows them, is what we're going to see, observe, and evaluate from the Rush Select coaches when they're running training sessions. It's like, are they complying with these 8 principles? And if they're not, part of our workshop is going to be to think, how could I tweak this session? How could I recreate the session or create a new one from scratch that I think would comply with them better? Because being Rush Way at the end is complying with these 8 principles. So you probably see them really small. So let me try to make this bigger. So the 8 principles that we're talking about, man, that's not that big. Okay. The 8 principles, I'll say them because they look a little bit small. The 8 principles that we look within the training session relate to 2 things, to what we coach and to how we coach it. That's important, and I'll tell you why. Because most of the times, when we're starting our coaching careers, we're really concerned about the what we coach. We're really concerned about the logic of the activity. And that's very important. Like, it's basically the activity realistic? Is it well organized? Is it creating the player behaviors that I'm looking for? All of that obviously is very organized. But then, or at least this is the process that I went through, and I know some of my colleagues, they went through the same. It's like, once you start feeling comfortable with the type of activities that you propose, you realize that a lot of the art of coaching is actually on the how I coach, how I manage that flow within the session, how I deliver my coaching points, how I make interruptions, how I perceive if something's going right or wrong. The how we coach is also important. So in the 8 principles, we cover a little bit of both, because there are many more, but these are the 8 that we're looking for. So the first one that we look for is, we say the coach within the session and the activity, the coach is using conditions to encourage competition. It's not related. I'm not telling you what to coach, what's the activity, but we're saying no matter what you do, because we feel it's a reflection of our club to develop that competitiveness, used obviously in a healthy way, is something that we want to do at all ages. We want to use conditions to encourage competition in every single session, every single activity that we run. And in fact, let's look at the 3. We were looking at a 3v3 keep away, right? I would have added a neutral to that one, 3v3 plus 1. But use these conditions to encourage competition. What can we do in that game? If we run that game, we say, like, okay, 3v3 keep away, blah blah. What things can we do to promote competition within that activity? Who has any ideas? This one's easy, come on. Trey, I saw you getting unmuted for a second.
How about to have them use their left foot only while they're passing the ball?
Could be. I mean, I don't know if you're encouraging competition, but I do like I like using those conditions sometimes because you're not really altering the game massively and you're practicing a certain skill, or trying to develop a certain skill, that's for sure. But what's the most basic, actually, the most basic way of adding a competitive element to every activity, or the one thing that we want to make sure that it's there to make sure that it's competitive?
I think just playing games and keeping score.
Keeping score, exactly. To me, it's the same one. every activity that we run, how do you score? Once you know how to score, we know that there's a winner and there's a loser in the game. So that's already going to make everybody like, okay, we're encouraging competition. Another one that we can use. I use one. Let me give you one. And the next one you gave me. A lot of times we're playing a game and, you know, maybe the teams were not so even. And the activity is going to last 15, 20 minutes. And after 5 minutes, there's one game that's winning 6-0. What can we do to encourage competition there?
Give the other team the opportunity to score 2 points instead of 1.
Could be. You can also obviously rearrange the teams to make it more competitive, like to balance the levels for sure. And there's another one that is really simple. Yeah, like you're winning 6-0 after 5 minutes. I say like, hey, okay, first game for the blue team, we start 0-0 again. Now the team that's trailing says like, okay, I get another chance to compete, because, you know, it's not you see them after 5 minutes, they're losing 6-0, they're like this, they don't want to play anymore. Another simple way of encouraging competition. One more, very simple. The game is even if one team is I do this, my parents are not always happy about this, but there are 2-3 minutes left. What do we do to encourage another push, another little competition?
I do.
Last goal wins.
Last goal wins.
Yeah, all the time. I always play last goal wins. The team that's winning hates me for it, but everybody starts running a little bit faster in that moment. So very simple things can make a difference to the environment. And again, you see, we're not really talking about the activity. We're just talking about how you coach that activity. For us to create one of the key characteristics of our players that we see in the final U18 player, that is competitiveness. We want to use conditions to encourage competition at all, in every activity, from at any age, from the start. And some people think like, hey, you don't think it's too much for a U7? No. And we say, honestly, they like competing. You don't have to turn that into a battle, but the player enjoys competing at all ages. So definitely, we add conditions to encourage competition. The second one that we use as a principle that we want to see in our sessions and activities is the coach. So basically, you're coaching positively and trying to encourage and build the player's confidence. And this is very important. This is very important. Like, and I was thinking about this in my own life. I remember once, you gotta be careful with it though. But I remember once I was 15 and we had this coach. He was really, he was not very expressive, let's say, right? And they played it through into me, and I was playing as a holding. And instead of stopping the ball, I turn around and I play a long ball to the number 7 over there, right? And the coach goes like, amazing. It's the one thing that I remember. I don't think I even remember his voice apart from that one. And it's not because he praised me, it's because I felt a lot more compelled to repeat an action when I was actually praised for doing something right than punished for doing something wrong. So I always invite everybody to say like, hey, when you're coaching, how many of your comments or interruptions or freezes are based on virtues and how many are based on mistakes? We find it a lot more effective to actually highlight or remark when you did it right. There's more, the player is way more likely to do it again. And you're also building the confidence of the player. The player has to, obviously, they have to believe in themselves. So for us, that's a simple one, but very important. Anybody, any comments about that one? Questions? Okay, next one. I love this one. We say one of the conditions that we look for, by the way, if it gets late for anybody and you need to jump off, no worries. Just let me know and I'll send the recording to you. This one, I love this one. I think it's really important. We say minimum 75% of the session is game based and opposed. What do you guys think this relates to? Something that we were talking about at the beginning.
Can you say that again?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So one of the principles that we have in this blue thread is we say minimum 75% of the session is game-based and opposed. What would you relate it with? Something that we spoke about at the beginning. That's why I was saying when we talk about at the beginning, that sounds philosophical. It's important for us because at the end, every layer relates to it. Any ideas? Thoughts?
Almost sounds like a trick question. It's just playing games, right? Like game-based situations, replicating what
Exactly.
happens in the game.
Totally. So that's why we said like we're not black or white, because a lot of people, when they read the first statement that we say, hey, we're looking for skills, we're looking for game realistic situations. Skills are created within this, not isolated or mechanized situations. People, I've gotten this question a lot of times. Like they tell me, like, hey, well, when do you do technical work? And it's like, you're telling me not to do technical work, and I'm like, no, hold on, that's not what we said. But yes, we think we want it predominantly game-based and opposed. And I always give this goofy example because I actually do this all the time. Let's suppose that I'm coaching a U17, so a lot of my sessions maybe, and at some point have a 15 minutes pattern play or something like you're saying, like something a little bit more technical, really, a little bit more of repetition of them. And there's nothing wrong about it, in my opinion, because we said 75% of the session has to be game-based and opposed. But for how long am I going to do it? 15 minutes, period. Now, if my session was 1 hour of patterns and 20 minutes of a game-based realistic situation opposed, I would hope somebody comes to me and say like, that session. So that's why, just to respect what we said before, we say like, hey, we live in a world of grace. You might do some technical work, and that's perfectly fine if needed, in my opinion. You gotta think as the coach if it's needed or not. But yeah, 75% of session at least game-based and opposed. So yeah, you're right, completely. There's another one that says the ball is rolling at least 70% of the time in the session. We use a chronometer for a lot of sessions to try to actually check how long the ball was actually played. We tend to overestimate this by a lot. We think that the ball has been rolling a lot more than it has been. Actually, 70% is not that easy to accomplish. And what do you guys relate this with? What do you think it's the inner purpose of using this principle of trying to keep the ball rolling at least 75% of the time?
Like you're talking about coaching in the flow as opposed to stopping play, try to coach in the flow more. Completely.
Coach more on the flow, and this was one of my biggest mistakes when I was just starting. That is, sometimes we overestimate the amount of information that the player can retain. So sometimes we freeze it, and not only that the freeze lasts very long, but we freeze it and we present 6 ideas. And the problem when you do that is like none of them stick. If you tell like we stop and you say, hey Kyle, when you were trying to receive that ball, you know what, why don't you use an open body shape, and at the same time use your left foot so that you can go forward, try to receive into space, make sure that there's nobody close to you. If there's somebody close to you, try to receive away from pressure. By the way, before you do that, scan the field, check your shoulder and check if there's somebody behind you. And if there's somebody behind you, try to pass it to that guy. After that, how many things are you going to remember? You're going to be like this. Yes, coach. Then how many are you going to do? 0. So maybe we go, we start with 1. Hey, Kyle, you know what? If instead of receiving on your back, you make 1 step to the left and you receive halfway turn, it's going to help you go forward. Do you think you can follow that? Yeah, right? Like, we'll try at least. I mean, I've been saying that to one of my players for like 3 months, so I'm still trying, but but yeah, it's easier to retain information like that. So exactly. So it's what you were saying, Trey. Is coach a little bit more on the flow, and also limit your interventions. Like, you know, there's so much. There's a limit of information that the player can retain, especially when that information is new. Then we have one. This one is really interesting. I'll send you complimentary documents and articles about this one. We spoke with Kyle about this one in the last workshop. Is coaching points. We want coaching points to be based on visual cues. It doesn't mean that 100% of the times you're going to be able to do it. But what we're saying is adding visual cues to a coaching point increases the effectiveness of the coaching point. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell are visual cues? So the idea is to relate it to something specifically that you can see. What science is telling us, and I'll send you this article later, it's like one of my favorite articles. It's what science is telling us is like even if it sounds obvious, the decision making, look that phrase, the decision making is a very perception-based process, and perception is very visual. So a lot of the decisions that we make very quick decisions when we're playing, are either not intuitive, but are basically memories that we have, like recollections from experiences, because they happen so fast that there's actually not like a conscious decision-making process. But a lot of them are also based on little visual cues that we have, that we see, that maybe we're not even conscious about it. So in this article, for example, and I'll send it to you, this is a video from Cristiano Ronaldo. You might have seen it. So he has no idea of what he's looking at when he's dribbling. But what I mean when he's dribbling is like not from a mechanical standpoint. What is he looking at to decide which way to go in his dribble, etc., etc., etc. So they use those glasses, and what they found out is like he's not aware of it, but he's looking at the hips and the knees of the opponent. And based on that, he makes the decision of where he's going to go. So basically, the visual cue here is that when you make that visual cue that he was using instinctively, when you make it conscious, science is suggesting that you can accelerate the learning process. So for example, let me simplify all of this. It sounds really complex. For example, I had no idea about this. I never thought about it, but one of the greatest visual cues of dribbling, and I mean dribbling like 1v1, right? Like imagine that you pass it to a wing and he's going 1v1 against the fullback. One of the greatest visual cues for dribbling is actually perceiving that there's space behind the opponent. And I never really thought about it as a player, or at least not consciously. Maybe that's why I wasn't such a good dribbler. But that's something that you look at unconsciously. Now, the moment if you start introducing the visual cue of like, hey, you know, when you were deciding to dribble or not, like, is there space behind the opponent that you can dribble to or not? Science is suggesting that accelerates the learning process. And you can use that tip for a lot of things that we do. One that we were talking about, I think we spoke about this one in the last workshop with Kyle, it's a very fashionable concept, actually. It's a good concept though, that it's the idea of checking your shoulder for your receiver, right? Like everybody wants to like clack, 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 and see what's around, which I think it's a really good idea. It's a very smart comment. But a lot of times when we do that, what we're telling our players is, hey, check over your shoulder, check over your shoulder, check over your shoulder. But what we're not specifying is to see what, right? What are you trying to see in that moment? And you can use it for a million things, right? Like you can say like, hey, check over your shoulder. If you have somebody right next to you, maybe receive in that direction. And if the opponent needs a couple steps from you, maybe you do, I like saying this, you know, like you do a counter move. You pretend to go to come back, or you pretend to come back to go, depending on the position of the opponent. So again, the whole story about visual cues is like, it's a little thing that you can master in your coaching that adds a lot to your coaching points. improves the learning process. Any doubts about that one? I'll send you the article anyway. That's a really cool article, actually. Cool. Okay, so we have 3 more, and I'll leave you alone. So this is the most complicated one, but it's going to be interesting for us to observe at the workshop in Select. That it's one of our principles is to simply think of the design of the session, the week, the season plan. In this case, we're going to look at the session, if that's meeting the player's needs. Because again, the one thing that you can't teach, I mean, I don't know if you can teach it. Let me put it differently. Like, what you can't replace, in my opinion, is the eye of the coach, observing. So I can give you a session and say like, hey, this is the session for present for U14, U15. But that's so relative. It's so relative. It might be extremely challenging for them, or it might and inappropriate, or it might be super easy and inappropriate. So I can replace your eye, your observation. So one of the principles for us is like making sure that the design of the session, week, training, season plan meets the needs of the players in that moment. And then 2 more. One is like we want activities that contain decision-making elements. This is the obvious one, isn't it? At this point, like I guess we're taught about this one in pretty much every coaching course, right? But I read once in one of these books, like you know, what's the name? Like, you know, like the free economics books. Like, so there are like soccernomics books, and they do these cool like econometric studies, and sometimes they support things that we would have said by common sense, right? Like, so when you start playing at a really high level, all of the players are good technically, all of the players are good physically, all of the players are good like all of them are psychologically strong, are like, yeah, there are differences, but you know what I mean? Like the level is up, like the bar is pretty high already. So what science is suggesting is like the difference between good players and really good players, it's a lot about the decision making. It's about the number of right decisions that they make. So if making the right decision, we can relate it with concepts that we saw before, like the difference between technique and skill and all of that are ultimately decision making. How are you going to learn to make good decisions if the situation that you propose does not imply a decision? That was pretty much all our point, which is another way of saying we want environments that are realistic, that are specific, so that you have to make a decision. The tutor that I had told me once, in soccer, the first thing is to learn to make decisions. The second thing is to learn to make the right decision. The third step is to make that decision fast. So we need the environment to give us the opportunity to coach it. And the last one, this is very important, is we want to see an ongoing cycle of feedback and reflection between the player and the coach. And this is vital, but unfortunately not as, and it sounds obvious, but unfortunately it's not as a common trait as it should be. There are way too many coaches still that think that coaching is like some sort of extension from the military, and you just go with a whistle and you cross your hands like this, and you tell everybody to do suicides for an hour and a half. Happens a lot in the high school game, for example. And that doesn't work. You're not learning anything. You're not helping the learning process like that. How do you want the player? I mean, how are you helping the learning process if the player has doubts or has questions, but he's afraid to ask? He's just gonna say yes, like this, to whatever you say. And what was it for? What was it for? Always take it, in my opinion, as a good sign when you try to teach something, and maybe by the end of the session, you know, one of the players comes and says like, hey coach, you know, when you were talking about this, I was thinking like, should I do this or should I do that? That means that the player is already open to you. And that's great. That's great. So from there, you start guiding. You start saying like, well, I mean, what's the situation? Tell me to me. Well, I would think about doing this. What would you do? Why don't we look at this? Why don't you do this? Why don't we keep thinking about this one? Tell me what you think tomorrow as well. Let's keep researching on it. Now you're making it participant centered, and you're creating this cycle of feedback and reflection between the player and the coach. So those are the 8 principles that we look for in every training session, in every activity. There are exceptions, obviously, yes, but that this is the framework that we propose. No matter what you teach, no matter the age, no matter the session, no matter the topic. When we go to select to the hub, what we're going to do the first day is the first day, meaning the first morning that we're there, is we're going to go and watch some of the top select coaches that we have in the event. They're really good coaches, actually. I know them well. And we're going to evaluate those 8 principles. We're going to look at their sessions and we're going to say like, hey, is he using conditions to encourage competition? Is there an ongoing cycle of feedback and reflection? This might be complicated. Be nice to them. There might be a lot of players that they don't know yet, and the players maybe are shy still to actually ask questions or like create a nice cycle of reflection. We're going to look if there are decision-making elements, if the session seems to be appropriate for the players or not. We're going to look for coaching points with visual cues. We're going to look at the ball rolling, if it's rolling enough or not, if it's game-based and opposed, if the coach is coaching positively and building the players' confidence. That's what we're going to look at. Based on that session, we're going to write comments, and then we're going to design our own session through the coaching manual. That's what I'm going to use. I'm going to teach how to use the coaching manual. That's going to be our first day, our main focus. All of our reflections, we'll debate them at lunch, and then during the afternoon, we'll have group projects to try to create our own training session based on what we've seen, what we learned from them, and these 8 principles. Does that make sense to you? Yep.
Pablo, are we going to be tracking trends of their sessions, of what the players are doing, and developing the session, our session, based on those trends, or just based on what the coaches are doing?
We're gonna use the same topic. So basically, let's suppose that they were trying to teach playing out the back. Well, we'll stick to playing out the back. Now, we can build off of it, of their session if we want to, or we can create a new one from scratch. In fact, if we really like their session and we don't really have a lot of comments or things to improve, I would say like, well, you know what, why don't we create another one? Let's start from scratch. But yeah, so that's a lot of the dynamic of the workshop, is actually doing real observation over the select coaches. Then we go at lunch. I'll do a demo as well of a session so you can criticize me. And then from there, debate and use the afternoon, evening to create our own sessions in groups, then present them at night. That's the first day. Second day, we're going to move on to a different topic, that is how to coach game day. That is the theory part that we're going to cover in the next webinar. Does that make sense to everybody, like the logic of the workshop itself? Do you think it's going to be interesting? Like we're still on time to tweak something if you want to, so you can let me know. Good, cool, awesome. I'm going to send you some a follow-up of this first webinar. And I'm also going to send you a session from the coaching manual. Let me know if somebody's still missing the user. But what I'm going to invite you to do, like just briefly, I'm definitely aware that people are busy. We have jobs. We have a lot of things to do. So you don't have to worry too much about it. Just let me know. But I'm going to send you a session for you to try to identify concepts that we saw in this first webinar, in this first instance. And tell me like, hey, look, I noticed these elements from the blue thread. Look, I noticed how it's reflecting or not reflecting. If you find anything critical, please let me know as well. it's reflecting or it's not reflecting the right way proposed. Sounds good.